We're good to go. So, hey everyone, welcome to. I guess I already changed slides. Welcome to the resume workshop with Dr. John Heaps. He's going to kind of go into kind of how to make your resume look good. First things first, I see a lot of new faces here. If you aren't an ACM member, it's completely free. The QR code's up here in the corner. In order to qualify as a member, while it is free, in order to get some of our T-shirts and kind of our giveaway prizes, you do have to be an active member. For this semester, that means it's 7 meetings. So this counts as 1, so you're already a 7th of the way there. As well, we also have a spring celebration, kind of like networking event that happens in the spring semester that we invite our sponsors to, as well as all our active members. So I'll leave this up for about like a minute. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. Again, for people online, if you just go to acmutsa.org and then go to I think resources and then new membership, you should be able to see it there as well. And then pass it off to the next one. So as well, ACM UTSA, we are pretty much on every single social media platform. We encourage everyone to join the Discord if you haven't already. It's super easy to remember, discord.acmutsa.org. That's where we post all the event information, as well as other opportunities for you guys to get involved, whether it be like internship stuff that we're posting or research opportunities. Just be sure to join our Discord to see more kind of what's available. If you miss a meeting and want to go back and see it, check out our YouTube or Twitch. It is just ACM UTSA. As well, check our Instagram, also just ACM UTSA. It's pretty much ACM UTSA on everything. We did a good job of keeping sure everything was in a single name. As well, we are looking for organizers for Rowdy Hacks. So if you don't know what Rowdy Hacks is, it is UTSA's largest hackathon. We had this past year about 350 people attend in person, with the organizing team being about 20-ish people, but we can always use more help. So definitely, if you are interested in being part of the organizing team, definitely scan this here. And then give that a second. As well, if you do want, if you can't scan this now, just reach out to me on Discord. I'm just Elijah on Discord, so just reach out to me. Other things, Intro to Python workshop is happening Monday. So this next Monday, 1 o'clock, 1 to 2 p.m. It will be hybrid. The room is still TBD, but it will definitely be online on YouTube. So feel free to check it out if you want to learn more about Python. Other thing as well, we do have Code Quantum coming up. It is our marginalized gender-focused hackathon. So if you are interested, I encourage you to register at the QR code there as well. And then next thing, sign in. This is kind of what everyone's probably waiting for. Sign in, sign this QR code here, check yourself in. This is how you record attendance, how we know people come to our events. Definitely also very helpful when we're like planning more resume workshops or other events. We can be like, hey, here's how many people show up, so we can be sure there's enough food for y'all. As well, helps our sponsors kind of gauge how busy our meetings are. Leave this up for a little bit, and then I will pass it off to Dr. John Heaps in about a minute. As well, I think that what's the sign-in link is just what member. It's just acmutsa.org/sign-in/ACM. Sign-in/ACM. So I can give you this and then change slides for you.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh, yes. Thank you. Cool. I hope everyone's doing well. I see a few familiar faces and a whole bunch of non-familiar faces. So that's totally cool. My name is Dr. John Heaps. You can literally call me any combination of those 3 words. I don't care. So whatever you feel, go for it. Basically, we're going to be doing a resume builder sort of right now. We're just going to basically be talking. This whole presentation is just, how to even approach this. So, I have this little thing, recording all that you've done. That's literally all we're doing, right? Especially this when we're getting your confidence after deep-rooted imposter syndrome and fear have set in. I know for a lot of us, especially those of you who are, seniors and juniors, you're about to be like heading off into industry, into government, into all sorts of things, maybe teaching, academia. And you're like, did I really learn anything? Like, do I know like anything that I like, how much did I actually learn? Like, am I actually ready for this? And the answer to that is very likely yes. And, very likely a bunch of fear and what we call imposter syndrome. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And so you realize, you feel like you don't know nothing, don't know anything, right? So I do hope that, this presentation, how to build a resume, helps at least a little with that, right? I mean, this is definitely not an overnight thing for you to just, get rid of those kinds of fears and stuff. But, like I hope this at least, gives you a little bit of confidence as like, oh, you know what? I know quite a lot of stuff, maybe not as much as I would like to, but, when you get on the job, they don't expect you to know everything. Like they're going to teach you what you need to know, like to work at like, they're in like at their company organization, right? So that's kind of the goals here, right? And I know some of you have built resumes before, or have attempted to do so, have like applied for internships. I know we have a number of freshmen and sophomores who probably haven't really ever done like a full blown like hardcore resume before. So this whole presentation is just to get you started. Like, how do I even approach this entire topic, right? Many of you, especially for freshmen and sophomores, remember, having to put up some resume-like thing together for, applying to university, right? And it's kind of similar. Like that is kind of similar to building a resume, but we're going to change a few things, and we're going to see a few things in a different light. And just change what we've done to make it a bit more like industry government friendly. So the goals here, first things first, we are going to discuss building a CV, curriculum vitae, instead of a resume. So I know all of you are like, I thought this was about resumes. I promise you that if you do a CV, which is almost the exact same thing as a resume, CVs are mostly used in academia, but you get to record literally everything you've ever done on there. So it can be pages and pages long, and everybody's like, yes, give me all the information about you. And, they're totally fine with it, right? Resumes, you get one page, right? One 8x11 page, and it's never enough. It's either you feel like it's too little or it's never enough, right? So building a CV is a really good way to keep at least sort of a master document of everything you've ever done, everything that that you can look at later. And then, we can easily take that and make it into a resume very simply in just a couple of minutes. We'll talk all about that. All right, so I'm hoping that in building something like this, you realize you have acquired way more knowledge and a lot more skills than you think you do. And you can discover maybe some confidence, and value in yourself before beginning your career, especially going into those, big, scary tech interviews that everybody's worried about, right? So, let's get started. All right, so we're basically going to be going kind of top to bottom, how you would, view or think about building your resume. We have a few examples, not like a whole bunch, but we have a few examples that we'll look at. And then I'll be stopping at some points to, for questions. And at the end, we'll, definitely ask if there's any questions, or if anybody wants to sort of start, doing that. We'll have whatever time we have left. I can go around and help and point out things, all that good stuff. So first things first, on the header is going to be your name, right? Obviously, probably a pretty important piece of information. For most of us, your name is just going to be your normal full name, right? I do want to point out that, a lot of us are a little uncomfortable, like for some of us, with our names, right? And we're a little worried about a lot of stuff, in industry that we've heard about, discrimination about a lot of things, racial, sexist, homophobia, transphobia, and those are definitely concerns, right? I'm not going to say that any specific company is, discriminating against anybody, but I do want to be, talk about this because I know this is a worrisome topic for some people. So on your resume, put whatever name you feel is the most comfortable. This is like, who you are on a 8x10 piece or 8x11 piece of paper, right? So whatever name you go by the most, it's totally fine. You can put that on your resume. This does not need to be your full-blown legal name. whether it's, and it can just be your, first and last name. It doesn't have to be, if you have multiple family names or anything like that, you don't have to put all of them on there if that's something that you worry about. So just make sure that you put the name that you're comfortable with. Now, on your resume, you can do that, put the name you're comfortable with before you sign anything, like you get through the interview and you get into the actual, you're about to get hired by your job. Make sure your full legal citizenship name is on every single piece of document you sign. If you don't, you're going to just run into problems later. And I know, like I said, I know some of us aren't comfortable with our legal names, and that's totally okay. But for legal purposes, like we don't make sure just everything's on there. You don't want the government auditing you when taxes come around. You don't want problems with your paychecks, right? We don't want that. So make sure whatever's on your green card, your state ID, your driver's license, just make sure that's the name on your paperwork when you sign up. But on your resume, put whatever name that, people are probably going to call you on the job, whatever name, you are comfortable with. Okay. You didn't think we were going to talk that much about a name, right? All right. So phone number, obviously, I know phone number is a little outdated, but it's, something good to have on there. Make sure your voicemail is set up. I know we all screen our calls. Everybody expects that, but, make sure your voicemail's set up. If you're expecting a call, that way they can, at least leave you, a message if they need to. Ooh. Oh, sorry. Okay. Your physical address is optional. It makes it a little nicer, a little more professional, but it's definitely not something that's necessary to have on your resume. But it looks nice. If you're not comfortable putting it on there, definitely don't. I know there's application forms, right, that usually sometimes go along with your resume. If they ask for your physical address, then you sort of have to put it on there. But on your resume, you definitely don't have to put it on there if you don't want to. Your email address. So make sure, like the best email address you can have on here is a personal email that's professional, right? So some sort of combination of your name and initials. Try to use a Gmail. That's probably the best right here. So j.s.heaps@gmail.com is mine. I'm sure everybody's going to spam me now. They know that, but that's okay. Obviously, so I know a lot of us, have a lot of personal emails that have lots of numbers. That might be, a little silly, or like, Hotmail or Yahoo or any of those. Those aren't like inherently bad, right? I mean, it's an email, it's all that's necessary, but it just doesn't look as professional. So definitely, if you can, go ahead and just make your own professional email. I know for some of us, it's a little difficult depending on how, common our names are, right? So, definitely do your best, use as much of your name as possible, your, preferred name as possible. But in the end, if like you can't really get something like to work, or if every combination you can think of is already taken, if you put 1 or 2 numbers at the end of your name, that's fine. Also, you can use a professional email, your school emails, professional email, work emails, anything like that as well. But usually, it's kind of as a last resort. You don't know if at any point you may not have access to these emails, right? I mean, most of us think we're going to have access to our school emails. I think you have access to it for, I think, up to a year after you graduate. So you do have, access to it for as time as you usually need, but you never know what's going to happen, right? If you have your own personal email, that's always going to be there, right? And finally, social media. This has become a little bit of a trend to put social media on your resume, which is okay. Like you can. But usually that's mostly for people who are going into things, like PR and communications. You're going to be an actor, right? Who you are is like a big deal, like, to the public, right? We, as at least, what for us in CS and, tech people, it's usually not something we have to worry about. So, you can put it on there if you want to, but, if you don't want to, totally fine. I would say, don't worry about it. It's just going to take up space on your resume that you could use for other things. So preferably not to. If you do put it on there, make sure you go through your social media and there's nothing on there you don't want any job or any industry people to see, right? So definitely, check that out. All right, so here's a very simple, like all of that, right? Just to have a simple, like silly little couple lines, right? So this is just a very simple, the address and the phone number are fake. So, y'all can do whatever you want with those. But yeah, so something like this. We'll talk about the formats and templates. Obviously, this is a very plain kind of, header, which is totally fine. It can be a little plain, but usually, using some sort of template or, formatting it a little nicer is, of course, up to you guys. That's up to you guys and your personality, exactly how you want to format it. We'll talk about it later, but pretty basic information, right? Cool. All right, so moving on from that, we have okay, so before we get into here, like any questions on any of that? I know that's just the header, and so I assume most people are totally fine with everything we talked about. Okay, cool. All right, so the 5 major sections that you're going to have for your resume is going to be these right here: education, experience, projects, skills, and publications. This set of 5 works for almost any type of job you're going to be looking for, whether it be specifically in CS and tech or something else. You just have to sometimes have a different perspective on some of them. For example, projects for CS, what kind of software systems have you built? What kind of projects, what kind of tools have you used? That kind of stuff, right? For someone in business or something like that, it might be events that they've worked on, campaigns that they've done, right? So same idea, just slightly different. And you can rename these as you wish. Instead of education, you can put academics, work experience, past experience. Up to you how to exactly say them. Like say these, as long as they basically mean the same thing, right? And so we'll go down each one of these. All right, education. So you only need to include colleges and universities. There's no real reason to put your high school on here anymore. For those of you who I'm sure have had, their high school on there, especially when you submitted to university, like any sort of stuff that you filled out or any resume-like papers that you've done. For university, you put your high school on here. There's not too much of a reason to do it anymore once you graduate from university. High school is expected, right? Like, your GED or your high school diploma is expected. So, and you only put the colleges and universities on there that you've earned a degree from: associates, bachelor's, master's, or doctorates. If you didn't actually graduate from any university, then you can put it on there if you want to. Of course, especially if it's a nicer, a higher name university. But that might beg the question during an interview of like, why did you not graduate from that school, right? And if you're uncomfortable answering that question, then don't put it on your resume. But otherwise, you can definitely put that. But the necessary is associates, bachelor's, masters, and doctorates, right? Which I'm sure for us, it's going to be mostly masters or bachelors, right? Right, include the month and the year of the degree that you obtained the degree as well. Note, this isn't the same always as when you actually do commencement, when you walk the stage. If you're unsure about, like, you can, I think, up to like 1 or 2 semesters beforehand, I think as long as you're 90% done with your degree, you're allowed to walk the stage if you want to. So make sure it's like when you received your diploma. If you're not sure, like exactly when that was, look on your transcript. It should be usually sometimes at the top, sometimes at the bottom. They change it all the time. But you'll find it on your transcript exactly like when your degree or diploma was awarded. All right. So notate any concentrations and minors. This is a big one. If you double majored, make sure to notate, that you double majored and put both of the degrees you got. If you get a concentration, whether it's, what do we have? Data science, cybersecurity, software engineering, or networks and cloud, make sure to put that on there. That's really important. That means, the people that are looking at your resume get a sense of like, what are your specialties, right? We're in the age of CS where everybody has specialties. Like we used to about 1 or 2 decades ago, you were supposed to know everything about CS. Nowadays, CS has gotten so big that you specialize and stuff. So make sure you do that. And then also make sure to notate any minors. If you get a minor in math or anything like that, put that on there. It always looks nice. All right, so include your GPA out to do 2 decimal places. That's just a standard. So you guys have 3 GPAs. I'm sure most of you didn't know you have 3 GPAs. Ones that you are most familiar with is your institutional GPA. That's if you pull up your transcript here at UTSA and you look at the very bottom, and it has your overall your GPA. That's the GPA for UTSA. Your UTSA, all the classes you've taken at UTSA. You also have a major GPA. These are all the courses that you took in your major, right? So that's all your CS courses, basically, as well as any courses that were required by the degree plan, right? So you have to take up to Cal 2, right? So Cal 1 and Cal 2 also go into, your major GPA. You have to calculate this separately yourself, but it's pretty simple, right? You just open up your transcript, look at all the CS courses plus Cal 1 and Cal 2, and calculate it out yourself. Pretty simple. If anybody needs help with that, let us know. You can email me. It's not too difficult. It's just add up all your credit hours, add up all your points, your credit points, and then, just divide points by credit hours. You're good. And then you have also, so that's your major GPA, and then you also have your overall GPA. Your overall GPA, for all of you who have only ever taken classes here at UTSA, it's the exact same as your institutional GPA. For those of you who are transfer students, this is the grade from all the courses you've ever taken at any university that in existence, right? that you've gone to. So whenever you transfer in, for those of you who are transfer students to UTSA or anywhere, they give you credit for the courses that transfer, right? But the grades, the points, if I got a whole bunch of A's taking core credits, at some other university or a junior college or something, and then I transferred into UTSA, you don't get all those A's, right? They don't go into your institutional GPA. You get credit for the courses, cool, but you don't get the A, right? So for those of you who are transfer students, this is, it's fine, right? You don't have to retake any courses, but the sort of bummer is that a lot of core courses help kind of pad your grade a little bit, right? When you're taking all those intro core, like, Comp 1, and you're taking like basic math, and you're taking, history and government, it kind of pads your GPA a little with some A's and B's, and that's kind of nice, so that when you get into your upper division courses that are really difficult and you start getting some C's, unfortunately, you have a bunch of A's and B's to kind of back you up, right? But for those of us who are transfer students and don't have that sort of backup, your grade might look a little not as nice as some others. So make sure, like, if you are a transfer student, you can also put your overall GPA on your resume, just to make it known that it might not, it looks better than what it actually is, right? You need to make sure to at least, and you can put all three of them on your transcript, right? You can put all three of them if you want to. You can only put one. It's up to you. You need to at least include your institutional GPA. This is mostly for if you're doing an internship and they actually require you to submit your transcript. The institutional GPA is what's on your transcript. So if you put a different GPA than what's on your transcript, they're going to get super suspicious about it and be like, what the heck, right? And then you have to sit there and explain the whole thing. So make sure you at least put your institutional GPA, and you can also include the other ones if you want to. Up to you. All right. And as we said, high school is optional. You can totally put it on there. There's nothing wrong with that. But I know for you guys who are kind of freshmen and sophomores, you're kind of struggling, right, to kind of find how to pad your resume and fill out the whole page a little bit right now. For those of you who are juniors and seniors, I'm sure you guys have gotten to a point by now where you have just so much on your resume that you're like, I need some space, right? And hopefully for those of you who are freshmen and sophomore, you will find that to be the case, when you get to be a junior and a senior. When you get internships, when you have lots of all your project courses are going to be your upper division courses, you're going to have a lot to put on your resume. So putting your high school is just kind of at that point taking up space. But, you can definitely put it on there if you would like to. The main thing might be if you graduated from some kind of like magnet school or something like that, something, a big name like high school, then it might be worth putting it on there. The other big thing is I know some of you who might have graduated like summa cum laude, right? Or might have some awards and achievements. You can always put those under skills. So you don't have to have a whole section for it. You can always put that stuff under skills, and it might free up some space if you need it. So, but again, it's all up to you, your resume. All right, so here's just a quickie example, right? So, this one's one of mine. May 2015, what was this one? Oh, my bachelor's, okay, for computer science here at UTSA. I have my concentrations here, right? Software engineering and data science. Or, well, no, I shortened that just to make it look prettier. We used to have an information security rather than the cybersecurity. And then we have the institutional GPA. I was a transfer student. And then the overall GPA, that looks a little nicer, right? So you can definitely put both. No big deal, right? You definitely don't have to have this sort of like phone number in San Antonio, Texas and stuff. It's up to you. I like to include it if I have the space, depending on the format and template you're using. Maybe you don't have the space. Not necessary. The only thing that's necessary is this, basic information right here. Make sense? Cool. All right. Experience and projects. So first, let's talk about the difference between experience and projects, since I know for a lot of people, they're like, I don't know, isn't that the same thing? So experience, is the businesses, organizations, clients, et cetera, that you worked for, and the position and title you held. The projects is the major bodies of work you did, right? So experience, maybe you worked at Google as a software engineer. for a period of time. Projects, that you did at Google and outside of Google. Here's one, updated Google Maps backend with more efficient algorithms and API to be more user friendly, right? Something like that, right? So that's the big difference, and we'll talk more in depth about them here in a minute. The big difference between the two. Your experience shouldn't be too, long. Each entry shouldn't be too long. Your projects is where you're going to be getting most of your good information, right? Your projects is where you get to like show off all your skills. Like, this is all the stuff I've done. This is why you want to hire me, is going to be in your projects. Experience is, of course, nice, especially if you have like a cool internship you did, if you have, a nice company you worked for, like if you did work for Google. I mean, that's, they're going to be like, oh, cool. Like, let's, let me hire you, right? But for the most part, projects is going to be, for most of you, like the big time to like show off everything. And we'll, of course, get there in a minute. They can be a little difficult to differentiate them. They're usually very related. I worked at Google and I did a whole bunch of projects at Google, right? So there are a bit interrelated, but, just do the best you can. If you, get them a little wrong, like no one's going to hold that against you really. But usually, if it's a client, if the actual business, organization, or client is experience, the actual projects you do, the actual thing you built is the project. So for both of these, try to be as concise but as descriptive as possible. You want to say as much as you can with as few words as possible, right? The little smaller amount of space you take up, the more projects, the more skills, the more experience you can get on like this one sheet of paper, right? But you need to be able to, explain everything, right? You can't be like, so concise that I didn't understand like what your project was or like what you were doing like at Google, right? So you gotta find and this is a kind of a skill in and of itself. To be, concise but as descriptive as possible. And also, it's totally fine to use well-known technical jargons. There are a few exceptions, for example, stack acronyms and stuff like that. You may want to, expand acronyms, but, most of the time, technical jargon and stuff like that is totally fine to use on your resume, because by the time we get to experience and projects, it's mostly the tech people that are going to be looking at it, right? We as, tech people, we have kind of a little bit of an annoying like interview process where you have to get through the normal business HR people first, and then you get to the technical people that are assessing your technical skills, right? The business HR people, they'll be looking more at your experience. They'll kind of look at your projects a little bit, and like your skill set. But for the most part, they're not going to really know a whole lot about what's going on in there. Most of the time, as long as you pass through the HR, business people, which usually isn't too difficult, you get to the tech people, and then, they want to know like what's all the stuff you did, right? So they're going to know the technical jargon, totally fine. If it's a little niche, if the jargon is a little niche, you may want to consider, not using it or having a couple, word explanation for it. But for the most part, you can use it. All right. And then for both of these, when you're describing it, use numbers where you can. That's the big thing. Like using numbers just makes everything look super nice and pretty, like, and makes it look better on you, and gives people more of a sense of like what actually happened. Now, I know numbers aren't possible in every single situation, right? In every single project and every single experience, like, job you did. Numbers might be a little difficult to use, but we have an example here, right? So, I helped fundraise for ACM organization. Cool, that's nice, that's great of a description, but we can make it a little better, right? Help fundraise over $1,000 for ACM organization. That's definitely better, right? I gave you a number, $1,000, and that's like significant, right? But of course, $1,000, that's very relative, right? Does that mean a lot to us? Does that mean a lot to other people? That's not accounting for, I fundraised it from like college students who are all, half of all, like 90% of everybody's broken here, right? So I mean, that's a feat, right? To get that much money. So, but how about this last one? Help raise $1,000 for ACM, 100% increase from the previous year's fundraising event, right? And we can definitely make this a little more concise. This is just a quickie example, but this gives you right here, gives you like a lot of context, right? I helped, double the fundraising amount from last year. That's like impressive, right? That makes gives everybody some context and some takes away all that like relativeness that makes people question, was that impressive? Was it not? I doubled the amount like from last year. Like that's impressive, right? So use numbers where you can. Try to be as descriptive and use them in the right way as well. And again, just like up here, just like being concise and descriptive, it's kind of, a skill in and of itself. All right. So let's talk about, experience. So we talked about projects versus experience. Let's talk about experience. What are you going to put in there? So what constitutes experience? So this is kind of kind of a departure from what you guys probably have done whenever you were submitting, everything into university, right? You had usually a lot of separate spaces for like experience and volunteer work and like all that good stuff, right? Extracurriculars, all that is experience now. It's all one and the same. This is all the stuff I've done throughout my life, and all this is like added to my understanding of what I'm about to do, right? Or what the job I'm applying for. So jobs, organizations, teams, extracurriculars, volunteering, advocacy, competitions, organizations, all that stuff is experience. Just treat it as experience. The ACM organization here, experience, right? Everything you do in it, experience. It's all best just to put it under experience because that's what it is at this point. So on your CV, you're going to list out everything, right? But on your resume, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, you're only going to include it on your resume if it's relevant, right? So you're going to have your CV, which is going to have everything on there. And then your resume, when you go to build your resume, you're just going to kind of pick out all the like specific ones that are the most relevant to that job. Does that make sense? Good? Okay, cool. So you can always include, and I know there's some things like, what if I was like the captain of like my, sports team or something like that. It shows like leadership, which it does, right? But you can always include that stuff under, skills. You can always include honors, awards, achievements, and notable activities under skills as well. Because you're probably not going to put something like that. Like that was, part of extracurriculars, right? So I said to put it under experience, but you're probably not going to actually put it on your resume, right? So you can always include it under skills and say, to show leadership. I, achieved achievement, right? I achieved, captain of my, sports team, something like that. All right. So give the name. So, okay. So that's, what goes into experience. So what do we do for like an entry, right? So give the name of the business, organization or client you worked for. And if you can, your direct supervisor. And then, if you can ask your supervisor if they're okay putting you their contact information, that's usually the best because they have a direct line to somebody that's like, can tell them about you, about your work, right? But if either your supervisor isn't comfortable with that, or if you don't want to put your supervisor's info for whatever reason, then you can just put the contact to HR or some sort of corporate number, right? And a phone number is plenty. You can also put your an email if you'd like. That's fine too. So it's just some sort of little contact information. For those of you, if anyone's done freelance. If you have like a business name for your freelance, use that. If you don't, you can just use, freelance and just, give a little description, right? For example, freelance photography, freelance website developer, something like that, right? If you don't have like a specific name for, a business or organization that you've like worked for. All right, give the month and year you started and finished working. That's pretty standard, right? How long did you work there? Give the final or highest title you achieved, especially if you worked there for a long time. Sometimes you move up in the ranks. Whatever your final, best title that you got, that's what you're going to put on there. And then give a brief description of your job duties, right? Brief description just means maybe, one or two at the most, like lines. Make it very brief, just make sure they get the point. I develop software for Google, right? If I'm working at Google, I developed software and worked with, the Google Map, the main Google APIs, and, updated and maintained them, right? Something brief that gets the point across, but isn't going to take up a whole lot of space. Because again, we're saving that space for projects. We're going to be really in depth on projects because that's where most of all your skills and everything are going to be showcased. The experience is just kind of like name dropping, like, ooh, I worked for Google. And so like that's all you're doing with experience, right? Is just dropping names. Projects is where you're saying like, this is like what I'm all about. Oh man, I'm sorry. There's supposed to be a little example. Oh well, I apologize for that. It's not experience again, isn't as, intense. And obviously right now, unless you've had internships, you guys may not have too much experience, at least CS specific experience to put on there. And then also, don't be afraid, at least on your sort of CV, your kind of master document, to put non-CS stuff on there. I worked as a waiter or something like that. It might come in handy later. I mean, you think it wouldn't, but like, let's say you're going to go work you're at a company or something, or you're going to go work sort of freelance to help build the POS system for some restaurant, right? Saying that, like, I used to be a waiter, like, I know what it's like, having a really difficult, annoying POS system to deal with could like, be in your advantage, right? Could help you out. Oops, sorry. So it's definitely, it's, again, your master document, no one's ever going to really see it. The whole point of it is just for you to sort of pick and choose and sort of customize your resume for, everyone else. All right. So for projects, we'll go over to projects. Give obviously the project title. If there's no official project title, then you can just make up an appropriate name, just something like semi-descriptive, a few words that'll just give someone, the general idea, right? So be careful. The specifics of the project are protected or classified, especially, as tech people, y'all are going to be working either for the government, like, and they're going to have lots of classified projects, or y'all are going to be working in industry, which you're going to have to sign NDAs for practically every industry, like, industry people, any industry organization or entity that you work for. So if these projects are classified or protected, just be careful about what you put in your resume, and especially be careful about what you say in your resume and your internship. It's always okay to ask your supervisors, exactly what you can disclose on your resume or how much you can say in interviews. If you don't want to specifically put it like that to your supervisor, as if like, you're going to be leaving the company or something, you can always say, oh, my family always likes to know what I'm up to. How much can I really talk to them about this, right? You can say something that's not explicitly like, I'm going to be leaving in a year and I need to know what I can put on this resume, right? So just you be smart about it. So after writing or saying what you can, any further questions by your interviewer, sometimes interviewers can be a little pushy about this kind of stuff. You should respond. Like if there's no more you can say, you can just easily respond. Sorry, but I'm unable to disclose any further details about this job or project. If they still get pushy about it, you can definitely, get pushy back and be like, I signed an NDA for you and I went to go to another job and, they started asking me about projects that are classified or protected. You wouldn't want me saying anything about your stuff, right? So definitely, I'm not going to say anything about this. And if they still get pushy, then, you probably don't want to work there. Okay, but just, as you go through your career, just be careful about this stuff. It can come back to bite you hard, like if you don't, follow the rules. All right. So we have the title, right? That was all in the title. So give the month and year you started and finished working on the project. So that's pretty normal, just like you would do in your experience, right? You can definitely put the starting and finishing, at least put the finishing. It's up to you exactly what to put on there, but starting and finishing is usually the best. All right, so now I have the project description. As you can see, it's a whole slide. This is the big moment for you to show off everything that you did. All right, so a brief description of the project goal, like literally don't take up more than a line on your piece of paper. You got one line. Don't do anything more than that. Just very brief. For example, updated Walmart's POS system. We said what we needed to say, right? So note whether you worked in a team or individually. If you worked in a team, so most all of you are going to be working in a team. Individual is going to be pretty rare unless you're doing freelance stuff. So if you worked on a team, put the number of team members you worked with, and also notate if you're the team lead. I led 5 team members or something like that, or I worked with 6 team members, whatever, right? The reason you're doing this, lead, you're showing you have leadership skills and you've led people before. But also number of team members, so I know sometimes like in resumes, when you go to the skills section, they're like, oh, works great with, team members or, individually or something like that, right? I mean, you can put that in skills, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot. And if you just put like, oh, I've worked in a team with like 10 members before and I've had to navigate those situations, like it's already implicitly there, right? They already know you can work in a team. And very likely you're going to be working in a team in almost anything you do. So, that's like a good thing to show. Like I've worked in small groups, I've worked in big groups. You're just showing that off. And then so these next 2 points are kind of the big ones. a big description, a brief description or list of what you specifically did on the project, right? If you don't put this, they're going to ask you in the interview, like, oh, you worked on the Walmart POS system. Cool. But what did you do specifically, right? Like, what are your skills that you learned by working on this project? So it's good to just put it on here anyway, because they're gonna ask, and it'll give you a chance to, in your own mind before the interview, to also think about, exactly what did I did, what did I learn. For example, for this Walmart one, expanded the database system, updated database and backend APIs, and built more advanced accounting and logging functionality into the backend, right? So, you can be a little more lengthy on this description. Like, this is the big one, right? This is the big description that they're going to want to be looking at, right? So, definitely, you can take 1 to 3 or even 4 or 5 lines to like talk about that. Try to still be a little brief. Again, you don't want to. That's still valuable real estate, right, on this one page. So you don't want to go on and on forever. But definitely, if you're going to spend a little extra, time on something, here's where to spend it, or a little extra space. Sorry. And then finally, after that description, list all the major languages, tools, frameworks, and libraries you use during the project. This is the other sort of big thing. This is like, again, you're kind of name dropping, but for all the skills that you got, right? So I used a mean stack or any stack, right? For the stacks, this is what I kind of meant earlier. I know most people are going to know what that means, especially the tech people, but, it happens that they might not. So just, it's fine to take the extra small amount of space to like just write out the whole thing. Mean stack, I did MongoDB, Express.js, AngularJS, Node.js, Docker, Google Analytics, and I use Java, right? So this is nice, right? It's explicitly like, I know all this stuff. Like, this is probably, like I said, these two here are probably your biggest things that are going to show off your skills and that are going to make that you desirable to, organizations. As I just said, be careful with acronyms, especially stacks, and assume the readers know exactly what acronyms mean. Obviously, if it's a very known framework or something like that, a normal thing, then it's fine. Like, you can assume they know MongoDB, Angular, Docker, Google Analytics. Those are big names, right? If they don't know those names, then that's a little more on them than on you. If you did work with something a little more niche, let's say you went to, for an internship, you went to a national lab, right? And you were working in like their weather department to help do simulations. And so you used like a weather library in order to, help the simulation, right? It's a little more niche, right? It still might be interesting, especially you might be able to find a connection between that and what you would be doing on this job. But if you do have something like that, something a little more niche, then it might be worth taking a few words to explain, like what that thing was, complex weather library for calculations or something like that. Cool. Makes sense for projects? All right, so this is a very quick, this is also a very brief example. You probably would want a little more detail, but even for this one would be nice. So this one's one of my old projects, automated bug and vulnerability detection. So research funded by NSF, built deep learning models to detect bugs and vulnerabilities in software code. Then what did I do specifically? Constructed different deep learning models to better embed code elements for learning. How many people were on the team? So I led the team of 3 people. And then all the stuff I used, right? Python, PyTorch, Google Play API. There was a few others, but I was just throwing this down quick. But does this make sense? And this is nice, right? It really gets you a sense of like exactly what, you already know that this person knows like a lot of stuff about deep learning, right? At least it feels that way. All right. So we have skills. So this AKA miscellany, AKA quick facts. So basically treat your skills like a quick facts about you, especially this happens kind of often in, this is definitely going to be something that the business people are going to like to look at. This is also something that happens in tech interviews, especially if you have someone who has, a whole day, just back-to-back tech interviews. They may not have had the time to, look at your interview. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, if you can, like obviously with this one, it might be a little difficult to use numbers. Like, I mean, the big number here is the number of people, right? And this is what I mean. Like, I know sometimes it's hard to use numbers or to find numbers. So if you can't find them, it's fine. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't like freak out. If I don't got a number, it's like a horrible entry, I shouldn't use it, right? Don't think like that. It's just, if you can, it just makes it gives it's a little cherry on the top. Like, it's a bonus if you can use numbers, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, no problem. All right. Okay, so yes. So I said also, like, even the tech people, if they've been doing back-to-back interviews, if they've had like a long week and you're like the last thing on their list to do before they're going home, they may not have gotten around to looking at your resume, to preparing for your interview, having your skills like this. The thing that they're going to look at your header, they're going to look at your academics like real fast, and then they're going to jump to skills. They're going to probably do over half the interview based off your skills. So your skills is decently important, but treat it like a quick facts about you. So, at the very least, you need to include in your skills section the programming languages, pretty basic, as well as all the major tools, frameworks, and libraries that you know. And it's totally okay if this repeats from the project section, just list them out, throw them down, and, just almost like, bombard them, like overload them with like, here's all the stuff that I know, like, hire me, dang it. Like, treat this section like that. And then optionally, include, if you know other languages other than English, like natural languages, not computing languages, human languages, then definitely put those on there. Notate if you're fluent, intermediary, or elementary level, like in speaking that language. As we talked about before, honors, awards, achievements, any leadership awards or roles, high school graduation honors, volunteering service hours, all the, this is a very, very generic thing right here. So anything that you think would, look good, then put it on there. Yes. Yeah. You don't need to put how well you know them. Just be careful about like just be careful about like, putting it on there. Like, if you took one, like quick, YouTube tutorial on Python, don't put Python, right? Obviously. But if, you did Java in applications programming and you haven't used it in like 1 or 2 years because you went to cybersecurity, so you don't really use Java too much, you can still put Java, like, Java, right? It might you might need to take a little time to get back into it, but it maybe take, a weekend to refresh yourself, but like, you got it, like, it's totally fine, right? So just be a little careful, but you don't need to be specific, like, I'm fluent or intermediary or elementary, right? Yes. I mean, I don't think length of time is probably the best thing to look at this. I think it's more about knowing the sort of structure and how that that language works. For example, like Java, like if you go through just programming 1, doing Java, that's definitely, you don't know Java. Like, that's definitely just an introduction to like, here's just how basic programming skills are. But once you get through applications programming, when you say like, this is an object-oriented language, this is what classes are, this is what interfaces are, this is how they connect together, this is how you call, create different things and call different things, then you can say, I know Java, even if you've never really done like a full-blown crazy project with it, like, it's okay. But yeah, don't think of it in terms of like time. Think of it more of in terms of just like inherent understanding of the thing itself. And I know that it can be a little difficult to like judge, especially like in the beginning, like whether or not you have those skills in certain languages. But I think, like seniors and juniors who are in here, I think you guys probably know like languages that you know and languages that you don't, right? Is there anybody in like who's a senior or a junior who like would be confused about whether they should put something like that down? No, I'm saying no's. Yeah. So it's something that like, it's a weird thing to, it's like, I don't know, very loose, right? For me to say that. But especially once you learn C and Java and get your hands on Python a little bit, learning other languages and knowing what it means to understand a language, like, will come with that, because you'll know that every language has a certain set of things in them. And so once you know that certain set of things, you're like, there might be other little quirks, there might be other little like things outside of that language can do, but like, I know basically like 90% of the language. So yeah, so don't worry too much about that specifically. Like, you'll definitely know, like when you sit down, like once you hit a little later, once you get through systems programming and applications programming, you'll know, like, think about it. Like if I sat down in front of a computer and someone told me to build small like program or a small system, like would I be comfortable doing that? Like even if I have to use Google like a smidge, like would I be comfortable doing that? Right? If you're comfortable, you put the language down. If you're not comfortable, don't put the language down. Does that make more sense? Okay, cool. All right. Okay, yeah, so that's everything for skills. Like I said, for skills, the big thing is just, again, here's all this stuff that I know. Try not to, again, take up too much space in your resume with skills. So obviously, if you've got like a page worth of skills, like maybe you should cut some things out. But definitely, be a little thorough. Like it's okay to be a little thorough and to really like put in everything that you want. All right, the final thing is publications. I know most of us in here do not have any publications. There might be like one or two of us seniors in here who have done independent studies who might have a publication or who might be getting a publication like in the near future. But it's all, I always say I want you guys to put this on your CV just to have the section there so you can remind yourself that that's a thing that's like important that a lot of people like to look at, especially in terms of research. So you can use, so for publications, basically treat it, like almost like a works cited sheet. You can use any format you list for your publications that you want, but MLA is usually the best. The best thing to do, I don't know if I can, I guess I don't have the computer, but I can maybe show it here in a minute. But the best thing to do is use Google Scholar. If you go to Google Scholar and you look up your publication, then you can, on Google Scholar, there's a little button that says Cite, and that'll like, you hit that button and a little pop-up window will come up with a whole bunch of, there's MLA, there's what's the other one, AP something. There's, if you ever have to cite things in LaTeX, they'll have a LaTeX version of it. That's just the easiest thing to do. If your publication isn't on Google Scholar, then I'm not saying don't put it on there. I would just hazard to say that it may not count for too much if it's on Google Scholar. But Google Scholar has like everything. So it would be very rare for you to have like a publication and not be on Google Scholar. The other big thing that I want to point out is that technical reports count as publications, especially for those of you going into industry who may not be doing research, but maybe you work on a project that creates a tool that gets really popular and everybody's like, we want a technical report to know everything about this tool, right? And so you create a technical report and your name's on it. That's a publication. Usually, especially in industry, technical reports are really nice on your resume. In academia, they're like, no, that's cool, but like mostly research papers are what we care about in academia. Okay, but I know, again, all you're doing is just listing out like almost as like a bibliography or works cited, all of your publications. All right, so we talked about this, all of this was mostly in reference to like a CV, right? Put everything you can like on that paper. Not only to, again, give yourself some confidence being like, oh yeah, I know a lot of stuff actually, but also B, because, you're even going from year to year, there's a lot of stuff that like you're going to forget about. You're like, oh wait, there was that project I did. What was it about? Like, what did I use? That's the big thing that we don't want to happen, right? The CV like has everything. So you don't have to keep track of the, especially once you get into industry, the hundreds of projects you're going to be doing. So, have a master document. And then the next thing we want to do is, go from that to a resume, right? So decide on a format or a template basically, and put the 5 sections on your, like in your resume. Pick and choose only the most relevant experience and projects list from your resume, right? So you have this big old list, you're going to be going for a job, read the job description, and then say, okay, if they want updating with their API, or maybe they want updating with their the front of their website, or maybe they want updating in their back end. Let me look at all the projects that I did and let me just pick and choose the ones that are like the coolest and the best, like related to that thing. And like, let me put it in there, right? Don't worry. I know in the past resumes where it's like, don't ever have any gaps in your like experience in your resumes. Don't worry too much about that. Like if they ask, like, I don't think that's ever gonna, if you have gaps in your resume for your work, like your experience, that's not gonna like get you an interview, right? People aren't gonna throw it away because of that. Like it'll still get you the interview. They might ask you in the interview, like, oh, I see there's some gaps here in like your experience. Then you can fill that in for them, right? You can just be like, oh yeah, like I worked in these places. I just, like they weren't as relevant, so I just didn't want to put them on there. I wanted you to see like the best things like for this job and all that kind of stuff. And then remember, like I said, every bit of space on this one page is valuable real estate. So choose those things that will show off your skills and expertise the best for whatever job that you're applying for. And usually, especially once you get in the groove of it, going from CV to resume is only going to take you like not even like 10 minutes max, maybe like 5 minutes, like to copy and paste, right? I don't ever suggest taking your CV and turning it into on the same page a resume. Make a new document and just copy and paste stuff from your CV into your resume. And it usually takes very little time, and it just produces a really nice resume. And then obviously leave off any sections that don't have any information for it. This will mainly just be the publications. If you don't have publications, obviously don't put that on your resume. Don't put the section on your resume. So here's a few optional things that you might see on other resumes: a profile summary or an about me at the very top. You can totally put that there. There's nothing wrong with that. But usually, again, that's kind of valuable real estate. So, you might want to avoid doing that. Instead, most jobs will ask for a cover letter, and that's basically what that is, right? The profile summary. Why are you applying for this job? Why do you care? Right? You're like, I need money, right? That's the real answer. But here's the nice answer that you want from me, right? But yeah, the cover letter is a lot better instead of having the profile summary or about me. This is another like whole like thing that people do: headshots on their resumes. You can totally do that if you want to. But it is definitely 100% like not necessary. Obviously, if you were going into like PR, modeling, acting, again, like we talked about before with the social media, right? If you are going to have a job that's like facing the public and you have to interact with the public, as part of your job, then obviously the headshot might be important, right? But we're not, right? We're the tech people. We all get like pushed in the back room and like the doors close. Don't look at the person behind the curtain, right? Like that's us. So they don't care about the headshot. And then references is another one. If you do references, I would put it under the skills section. You can totally have them. There's nothing wrong with that. Usually letters of recommendation are a lot more powerful. So, ask your professors. Oh, yes. The what? Say it again. So letters of recommendation. So sometimes it depends on what you're applying for. For example, internships, especially if they're like a little research related, they'll have a whole separate system for letters of recommendation. They'll be like, we don't even want you interacting with it. Give us the email of like the person that like that's gonna give you the resume, the letter of recommendation, and we'll contact them for you. And we'll do everything separate from you. If there's no separate system, then you just ask your, professor or, other sort of industry jobs, internship supervisors, all sorts of people, right? That could give you a letter of recommendation. You can just ask them for it and just say, email it to you, and then you can submit it as part of your resume. Either usually when you're submitting everything in your application, there'll be a separate section for recommendation letters, or if there's not, you can just attach it like to the end of your resume, and that won't count as like multiple pages to your resume, right? that'll be separate. Someone will look at it and be like, oh, a letter of recommendation. What a bonus. So yeah. Does that make sense? All right, cool. And then references also, a lot of times, especially because I know sometimes you'll have your resume, but you also need to have like an application like page, right? A lot of times they'll ask for references. If the references are asked for on the application page, then definitely don't worry about putting references on your resume. If they don't, and you don't really have necessary letters of recommendation, but you still want to put the references, totally fine. Just put it in the sort of skills section. It's usually the best place, in my opinion, to put it. All right. And then the format. So basically the format is very loose. It's up to you guys. Choose a style you like. There's plenty of templates and stuff like that online. I definitely would, say don't, pay for one, or don't pay too much for one. There's some websites that are like super expensive, and I'm just like, guys, it's just a template. Dang. So don't, pay too much for one. I would say don't pay for one at all. Most styles and templates, either you or a friend can recreate for very little, for nothing. But basically, this is you, right? This is you represented at an 8x11 like piece of paper, right? So definitely choose a style that you like, something that shows off you, shows a little of your personality, a little of your quirkiness. So definitely, go for it. Obviously, just make it, professional. Don't have some like spiral letters, that nobody can read, right? Don't go crazy. But definitely, put a little personality into it. If you, I mean, this isn't, of course, necessary. If you just want, plain straight, the header and like going down the page, nothing is wrong with that. That's totally fine. It won't make like, the format itself won't make a huge impression. But again, as long as the content's there, it's fine. Like that's what everybody's going to be judging you on. If you do choose a template, I do like the little, I will say, the little like quick facts or the little sidebar ones that have a little like note like thing like space on the sidebar or a little like upper area for quick facts, to put your skills in there. That's usually pretty nice. Like I said, business people, and if you get someone who doesn't like who didn't have time to prepare, they like to know like where's the skills. Like they use it as their quick facts, have it kind of set apart, kind of like highlighted, like here it is. Makes it just a little easier for them. One last thing, avoid too many colors and make sure it looks good in grayscale. That's a big one. So definitely you can use colors in your resume, make it, fancy, make it pop, totally up to you guys. Just make sure that before you do anything, look at it in grayscale, right? And make sure that it looks okay. Because most of the time people are going to be looking at these digitally. So, the colors are going to be great and that's all fine. Once in a while, you're going to get someone who likes to print everything out and they're definitely not going to use color, ink for your resume. Okay. So they're going to print it out in grayscale. And if it looks atrocious in grayscale, I mean, again, if the content is good, it's not going to, necessarily, be bad, but, it might be a little off-putting. So make sure, like, if you do use colors, totally fine. Just make sure it looks good in grayscale. All right. And finally, I think this is the final slide. So for the interview, like you do all this for your resume, awesome. You get some great interviews, calls back. Make sure to have a copy of your most up-to-date resume on hand when you go to your interview, right? If the interview is in person, I would say, obviously have a printed copy. Make sure this is also good for, like I said, if you're the last thing that someone has to do before going on the weekend, and they had a whole bunch of meetings, and they didn't have time to prepare. They may not have even like pulled up your resume, right? They've never looked at it before, right? So they're going to spend like 10 minutes trying to pull up your resume and find out where's the resume, right? You don't want that to happen. Bring a copy of your resume. And usually, especially for us in tech, like I usually would say bring a few copies, bring like at least 3, because most of the time you have at least two interviews, right? You have your behavioral interview with like HR/business people, and then you have your technical interview with the actual tech people, right? And you want to have a resume for everybody, so make sure to bring a couple so that you can give it as needed. Also, make sure it's as up to date, and you can even tell them like, oh, like I actually, it's because by the time you submit versus the time that you actually get the interview, a few months have passed. Maybe there's another like really interesting project you did that's like super relative, right? And you can give it to them, be like, oh, there's this new project I did. You can tell them it's like more up to date. Use that one, right? And then if it's a virtual interview, that's great too. Just have it ready, that you can email it to your interviewer, and you can share it on your screen if they ask for it. And you can ask them, oh, I have a copy of my resume that's more up to date. Can I email it to you real quick? All that good stuff. I think that's it. Yep, that's it. Okay. So any questions on? I know that was a lot of just info dump. So any questions about anything? Yes. 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 Oh, you mean like personal projects? Yeah. Oh, yeah. They'll love that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you'll have it notated as individual, like you worked on it on your own, and there's no problem telling them that it was a personal project that you just did to learn something that shows initiative, all that good stuff, right? So yeah, you can totally put those on there too. And then also for projects, I know a lot of you have done projects both in class and individually. If at all possible, I know this isn't always possible. If at all possible, for example, if you do like a website or something and you have it up, like obviously you'll have it up for the class. If you can keep it up for the interview and you can actually like pull it out, like, I mean, everybody says don't have your phones on. Have your phone on, have it silent. But if you can pull it out and be like, well, let me show you about this project, right? That's usually pretty nice as well, that, the interviewers can usually appreciate. And if they don't want to see it, then they'll just tell me, oh, no, we don't have time. But most of the time they'll appreciate to be able to look at that kind of stuff, if possible. Again, not 100% necessary. What was the question? Yeah.
What do you think about attaching a GitHub of your code?
You can't. Like if you have a repository of other code, yeah. If you're comfortable with that, like putting that on there would also be great. Like that GitHub would probably be like we said, social media for like PR people and communications people. GitHub is like social media, like for us, right? So definitely, I think that would be good. I'd just put it under skills and stuff like that. Right. Yeah. I would just definitely. You may not. So, you're saying put like a specific link to the code, like in each project, like entry, or just like to the full. Oh yeah. Perfect. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I would 100% like say that's great. Yeah, well, it depends. Sometimes they will look at it if they do have a chance. It all depends on like time, right? If you have someone who has the time, they would definitely love to see it. If you have someone who doesn't have time, then they may not see it. But it definitely doesn't hurt, right? Like it's only going to be beneficial, right? It's not going to detract from you. So yeah. And then one over here. Right. So definitely the first thing to look at, right, is can I make things more concise? Can I make it to where I can save a couple of lines? But I know sometimes that can be really difficult, especially if you already wrote it to be concise. Sometimes it's harder to take any more away. If you do need to take something away, that's why I said, prioritize projects for sure. If you need to take a little away from experience, obviously your education, like you need to have that on there. So you can't really, especially if you just have the 1 or 2 degrees, you can't really change that, right? And then you can definitely try to condense them as much as possible. For experience, that could definitely be something that you might be able to if there's an extra internship that even though it's relevant, maybe it's not going to be as powerful as the project, go ahead and take it off. And you can always, because usually during the interview, you can always, bring up other stuff, right? Because they're going to ask you lots of questions about projects and about the projects you have in your resume and, not. And so you can always bring it up at that point and be like, oh, I did this other project. I wanted to put it on there. I didn't have the room, but it's also relevant, or I did this other internship, right? So, you also have that as an option. But right, the resume primarily is just to get you into the interview, and just serves as a little template guideline outline for the actual interviewer to kind of go over stuff, right? So you can definitely, once you're in the interview, you can drop as much information on them as you want. Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's also totally fine. For websites and even for GitHub, either you can put it under skills, or it may be even better to put it in the header. Especially, let's see, because I know definitely for academia, that's a whole big thing. Is to put, so obviously we can see there's still plenty of space, right? So if you have a website or something, the only big thing is just make sure the website isn't either, if you need to get a shortened link or something like that. If it's some really long, complicated, website that sometimes you just copy and paste a website link into an email and it takes up 3 lines, obviously don't put that on your resume. But yeah, definitely putting it up here in the header would be beautiful. Perfect. Yes. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? All right, cool. Well, I guess that's it for this part. We have a part 2 that'll be in 2 weeks. We'll have more information about all that stuff. And so that the part 2 won't. So this was part 1, right? Just going over everything. Part 2 will actually be you can, I think what we had last year, where you can bring your resumes and stuff and have us, professors kind of look over it for you and point out, things that you could do better, things that you could change, all that kind of stuff. And we'll make more. ACM definitely will push out more announcements and stuff like that for that in the near future.
Yes. Thank you so much for the lots of resume stuff. It's always nice to have it. As well, thank you for everyone coming to our meeting. I can put up the sign-in form again for those that missed it, or the sign-in QR code. If you didn't sign in, feel free to sign in. Like Heaps said, we're planning. There's a plan for another resume type event happening in 2 weeks. So just feel free to look out on Discord. As well, we probably send the information out to other professors to share. But other than that, thank you all for coming. There's snacks and stuff still in the back if you guys want chips or something.